Recorded Books Incorporated presents an unabridged recording of Great Catherine by Erickson, narrated by Davina Porter. This work, copyrighted 1994 by Erickson, is recorded by arrangement with the Jean V. Nagar Literary Agency. This recording is copyrighted 1994 by Recorded Books Incorporated. From the moment the 14-year-old Princess Sophia of Anhalt-Zerbst agreed to marry the heir to the Russian throne, she was mired in a quicksand of intrigue. Precociously intelligent, self-confident and attractive, but with a stubborn wayward streak, Sophie withstood a degree of emotional battering that would have broken a weaker spirit. At last, she was to emerge triumphant over her enemies, as Empress Catherine II of Russia. And now, Great Catherine.
Chapter 1. The small, lively, rather plain little 4-year-old girl walked up to the king and reached up to tug at his jacket. She had been taught to kiss the garments of older people as a sign of reverence, but the stout, red-faced man who watched her approach with a severe expression was wearing a jacket that was too short, and this made it difficult for her to do what her mother had ordered. A look of disapproval, almost of disdain, crossed the child's regular features. Her unusually large, wide, light blue eyes, bright with intelligence and sensitivity, looked fearlessly into his sternly imposing face. Then she turned and walked back to where her mother and great-aunt were waiting. "Why does the king have such a short jacket?" the little girl demanded, in a voice that carried well even in the grand salon with its high-painted ceiling and thick hangings. "He's rich enough to afford a longer one, isn't he?" Her mother, intensely uncomfortable, and only too aware that the watchful dignitaries, military officers and titled ladies, not to mention the court chamberlain with his broad-bottomed wig and long staff, the elegantly dressed ladies of honour and chamber gentlemen, the solemn footmen in their velvet liveries, and her grandmother, the Duchess, were all waiting for her to respond to the child, was silent. The king wanted to know what the little girl had said, and what Frederick, William of Prussia, wanted to know, he found out. Someone repeated to him the child's words. The courtiers held their breaths, the mother turning very red, her distress apparent. Then, to her amazement, he laughed. The king, who carried a cane to beat his soldiers with when they didn't march fast enough to satisfy him, or when they deviated from his strict and detailed orders, actually laughed. "The little one is impertinent," he was overheard to remark. Then he turned away, and the tension in the room was broken. The child, Sophia Augusta Frederica of Anhalt-Zerbst, was precocious and active, with an excess of energy that made her brash and often headstrong. She chattered endlessly, she was full of questions, and she noticed and remembered things that made no impression on duller children. She learned to read at a very young age, and before she was 4 she was reading French, at least after a fashion, and writing names and dates. She knew that she wasn't a pretty child, and she sensed that that was all her mother cared about. But she also knew that she was clever, and that her animated conversation, high energy, and cheerful disposition could bring a smile of pleasure to the faces of the adults about her, just as her impertinent question had made King Frederick William laugh. She was a princess of the insignificant but honourable Principality of Anhalt-Zerbst, one of the 300 or so independent political entities where German was spoken. In the year of her encounter with the Prussian king, 1733, these 300 scattered principalities, free cities, bishoprics and dukedoms were bound only by the loosest of...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.